A millionaire runs through the city streets with a dog, racing to make it to his ex-fiancée's wedding on time. But what happens next will shock you. Before we continue, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Now, enjoy the story. The sound of hurried footsteps echoes through Chicago's bustling streets, accompanied by the excited barks of Cooper, the golden retriever running beside him. Ethan Parker feels sweat trickling down the back of his neck as his breathing becomes increasingly shallow. He can't be late. Not now. With his heart pounding in his chest, he weaves between pedestrians, rushing through alleys and narrow streets. "Come on, champ. We're almost there," he says, panting. Cooper, though tired, keeps pace by his side, his eyes reflecting the same fierce determination. Ethan glances at his wristwatch. Time seems to slip away like grains of sand through his fingers. He's not sure if he'll make it, but something deep inside drives him forward. As he turns the final corner, the church comes into view. Relief and anxiety hit him all at once, his heart leaping in his chest. The main doors are shut. Damn it! He slows his pace, still gasping for breath, and surveys the scene. There's only one explanation. Rachel has already walked down the aisle, and the ceremony has begun. He's too late. His eyes scan the surroundings until they land on someone familiar. Emily, his 8-year-old niece, stands near the side entrance of the church, dressed in a charming white gown. In her hands, she holds a small velvet box containing the wedding rings. She seems distracted, rocking back and forth on her heels as she waits for her cue to enter. "Emily," Ethan calls out in an urgent whisper. The girl lifts her head, and as soon as she recognizes him, her eyes light up. "Uncle Ethan," she exclaims, running toward him. When she reaches him, she wraps her arms around him tightly, as if they hadn't seen each other in years. Moments later, she crouches down and hugs Cooper, who wags his tail enthusiastically. "You brought Cooper." Emily giggles, her voice full of joy as she strokes the dog's fur. Ethan smiles, gently tousling her hair. "Hey, kiddo, I need your help. We're going to do something special. I want you to place the rings on Cooper's back. You two are going to walk in together and deliver the rings to the bride." Emily's eyes widen in surprise, but a bright smile quickly spreads across her face. "Really? The two of us together? That's right." Ethan nods, adjusting Cooper's collar to secure the rings. Emily stands up straight beside the dog, her posture now full of confidence. "I'm ready," she announces with excitement. With a grin, Ethan watches as his niece and the loyal golden retriever prepare for their grand entrance, knowing that this moment might change everything. The doors open with a quiet solemnity, revealing the small figure of Emily leading Cooper down the central aisle. Ethan watches from the side entrance, a wave of relief washing over him as he feels a sense of accomplishment. Rachel stands at the altar, her hands entwined with those of her groom. But as soon as she spots the golden retriever, time seems to freeze around her. She gasps, covering her mouth in shock. Tears well up in her eyes almost instantly. Without a second thought, she lets go of the groom's hand and runs toward the aisle. "Cooper!" she cries out, her voice breaking with emotion. She crouches down and wraps the dog in a desperate embrace. "You came back. I can't believe it." Her hands move gently through Cooper's golden fur, as though afraid he might vanish if she didn't hold on tight enough. Rachel stands and turns to Emily, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Sweetheart, go get your uncle. I need to speak with him." The guests exchange puzzled glances, whispers spreading quickly across the room. "She's calling her ex-fiancé? Is she going to cancel the wedding? This is insane." Moments later, Emily returns with Ethan. All eyes follow him as he walks toward Rachel. The tension in the air is palpable, but Rachel doesn't care about the stares or murmurs. "How did you do this?" she asks, her voice thick with emotion. Ethan offers her a gentle smile. "It's a long story, but we'll talk later." The important thing is that he's here. Now you can have the wedding you always dreamed of. With your loyal companion carrying the rings, Rachel takes a deep breath, letting his words sink in. Then, without warning, she pulls Ethan into a tight embrace, conveying a gratitude that words could never fully express. "Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me." "I do," Ethan replies softly as he steps back. "Now go. This is your moment." Rachel smiles warmly and nods. "Stay here. We'll talk later." Ethan takes a seat in one of the back pews. As the ceremony continues, his phone vibrates in his pocket. It's another emergency. He exhales, knowing what he has to do. Silently, he slips out of the church. On his way to the hospital, where he serves as both director and chief of the medical staff, Ethan Parker walks with steady steps, though his mind drifts to memories he can never quite shake. The night wraps the city in an unusual stillness, broken only by the sound of his shoes echoing against the asphalt. He sighed deeply, murmuring to himself, "It's always been like this, giving everything to my patients and the hospital, and life just slipping through my fingers." Memories of Rachel surfaced like an unstoppable wave. He recalled the days when she waited patiently for him, the dinners she had prepared that he couldn't attend, the promises he had postponed. Of course, she couldn't wait forever. Who could? Ethan shook his head, reflecting in a low voice. Women need more presence, more affection, more care. And me, I've always had two options: save lives or live like everyone else. I was never able to find the balance. The past unfolded before his eyes like a scene from a film, bringing with it a mix of happiness and nostalgia. He remembered that special day, an afternoon bathed in sunlight at a park on the outskirts of Denver, when he had planned to propose. He had been nervous, a rare feeling for a man used to making life-or-death decisions in the hospital. Rachel had arrived at the park unsuspecting of what was to come. She wore a light, flowing dress, the breeze playfully tossing her hair. When Ethan saw her, he was reminded once more how lucky he was to have her in his life. With a shy smile, he led her to a bench near the lake. After a few casual words exchanged between them, Ethan got down on one knee and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. The look of surprise and emotion on her face would remain etched in his mind forever. "Rachel Bennett, will you marry me?" he asked, trying to steady the tremble in his voice. She gasped, bringing her hands to her face, her eyes glistening with tears. "Yes, of course, yes," she exclaimed enthusiastically. But Ethan had one more surprise. He whistled softly, and from behind a tree came a tiny golden retriever puppy, his fur shimmering in the afternoon sun and his curious eyes wide with excitement. The puppy stumbled over his own paws as he ran toward them, and Rachel burst into a joyful laugh. "Oh my God, Ethan! He's perfect!" she exclaimed, crouching down to scoop the puppy into her arms as he eagerly licked her face. "He's yours? Or rather ours," Ethan said, watching the happiness radiate from her eyes. "I know I work a lot, so I thought maybe he could keep you company when I'm at the hospital." Rachel hugged him tightly, the puppy squished between them but still wagging his tail enthusiastically. "Thank you. I've never received a gift so special. He's already part of our family." From that day on, Cooper became inseparable from Rachel. She cared for him with a love that overflowed. Whenever Ethan returned home late at night, she was always there, waiting for him, with Cooper lying peacefully at her feet. "One day, he'll carry our wedding rings," Rachel would often say, stroking Cooper's fur. "On our wedding day, he'll walk down the aisle with me. It'll be perfect." Ethan would always chuckle softly and nod. "It'll be exactly like that. Promise." But promises are easy to make when the future still looks like a straight, clear road. He never imagined that life, and the choices he would make, would steer him so far away from that dream. Now, as he walked through the streets of Chicago, those memories weighed heavily on his heart. Cooper was more than just a dog. He was the living proof of the love Ethan and Rachel had once shared, and of what he had lost. The years passed in a blur. Days faded into nights without warning, and weeks piled into months. Ethan Parker threw himself completely into his work, racking up achievements and responsibilities that would have made any other man feel accomplished. His name appeared in medical journal articles, and he was frequently invited to speak at national conferences. The hospital he had taken over became a model of excellence, a national reference point, saving hundreds of lives under his leadership. But with time, success came at a silent, relentless cost. Ethan's personal life withered as he gradually gave up the simple moments that form the foundation of a relationship. He began missing Rachel's birthdays, leaving empty chairs at dinners she had carefully planned. Family Christmases turned into hurried phone calls between shifts. Romantic evenings were replaced by endless meetings at the hospital. Rachel tried to hold on to hope. She organized surprises, wrote loving notes, and did everything she could to fill the gaps left by his absence. But each unreciprocated effort weighed more heavily on her heart. Cooper, her loyal companion, became the only constant presence by her side in those lonely moments. Their love didn't shatter all at once. It eroded slowly, painfully, until one night, Rachel made the difficult decision to face the truth they had both been avoiding. She waited in the living room, her eyes fixed on the front door. When the key finally turned in the lock, Ethan entered, exhausted and distracted. He barely had time to register the grave look on her face before she spoke softly. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but I can't do this anymore." He froze, his medical bag still in his hand. Her words hit him with an unexpected force. Rachel took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. "You have no time for me. I feel lonely. All the time. Our love has grown cold. We're like roommates now, when you even bother to come home and sleep." The silence that followed was long and painful. She waited, hoping for a different reaction, an appeal, a plea to reconcile. But instead, Ethan quietly walked over to the couch and sat beside her. He took her hand gently, a sorrowful, resigned expression in his eyes as he looked deeply into hers. "I know," he said with a heavy sigh. "I've thought of a million ways to change my routine, to be more present with you, but I just can't. I can't give you what you need. I'll never be able to." Pain flickered in her eyes, but Ethan continued, his voice now steady and resolute. "I want you to stay here, Rachel. Keep the house. I'll move to an apartment near the hospital. That way you can move on with your life the way you deserve." Rachel's heart clenched. She still loved him, despite everything. She wanted to scream that he couldn't give up, that they still had a chance. But before she could say anything, Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. Another emergency. Of course it was. He stood, picked up the phone, and answered it. When the call ended, his expression softened slightly. He stepped toward her and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. "I have to go. Pack up my things. I'll send someone to pick them up." And that was it. No dramatic farewell. Just the cold efficiency of a man who knew he had to return to his duty. Rachel sat frozen as he walked out the door without looking back. She felt the engagement ring on her finger, cold, like the emptiness now settling in her chest. Slowly, she slipped the ring off. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. In that moment, she knew their relationship was beyond saving. As Ethan's car disappeared in the distance, Rachel held the ring between her fingers, finally accepting that the dream they had once shared was over. The years passed, and as expected, life led them down different paths. Rachel met someone new, a kind and attentive man, someone willing to build a future with her. Their relationship blossomed, and together they began planning a life as partners. Ethan, on the other hand, learned about her engagement the same way everyone else did, through social media. On lonely nights in his apartment near the hospital, Ethan would occasionally scroll through Rachel's profile. The photos displayed radiant smiles and joyful moments, There she was, standing beside her new fiancé, surrounded by friends, family, and of course, Cooper, ever present at her side. Ethan didn't feel bitterness. He knew Rachel deserved this happiness. Deep down, he accepted that he could never have been the partner she needed. However, as the wedding date drew nearer, the frequent updates on her social media slowed. Then, a month before the ceremony, something unexpected happened. Amid the chaos of moving into her new fiancé's house, Rachel had unknowingly left the front door open. The constant movement of boxes, furniture, and distracted visits from family members created the perfect storm for disaster. Without anyone noticing, Cooper slipped out of the house and vanished into the neighborhood. When Rachel finally realized Cooper was missing, panic overtook her. She and her fiancé searched every corner of the house, calling his name loudly as they walked up and down the streets. Hours passed, but there was no sign of Cooper. It was as if he had vanished without a trace. Rachel felt a tightness in her chest that she couldn't ignore. Cooper was more than just a dog. He was a living symbol of an important part of her life, one she wasn't ready to let go of. With no other option, she gathered her courage and sent a message to Ethan. "Ethan, it's Cooper. He's gone. I'm desperate. We can't find him. Can you please help me?" Ethan read the message in the middle of a long meeting at the hospital. Seeing her name on the screen stirred something within him, a faint discomfort, as if the weight of the past had momentarily returned. But there was no hesitation in his response. "Of course, Rachel. I'll help however I can. Send me all the details." Over the next few weeks, Ethan balanced his time between hospital emergencies and the relentless search for Cooper. Rachel and her fiancé rallied friends and family, put up posters around the neighborhood, posted online ads, and even offered a reward for Cooper's safe return. Ethan did the same. He spoke to pedestrians near the hospital and visited animal shelters during his breaks, but found no trace of the dog. No matter how hard they tried, Cooper seemed to have vanished completely. With each passing day, hope faded. Rachel tried to stay strong, but her sadness was evident. Losing Cooper felt like losing an important link to her past, a part of herself she wasn't ready to let go of. Ethan also felt the burden of responsibility. He knew how much Cooper meant to Rachel. The memory of the day he had given her the puppy and the happiness that had lit up her face haunted him. Even though life had led them down separate paths, he didn't want to fail her. Cooper was a bond that still connected them, and Ethan wasn't going to give up. That night, the sky was overcast. Ethan walked slowly through the streets near the hospital, heading toward his usual refuge, a small bar called the Midnight Lounge. It was a place where he could relax for a few moments, listen to soft jazz, and enjoy a good drink. The day at the hospital had been exhausting, as always, but his thoughts remained consumed by the search for Cooper. He knew Rachel's wedding was the next day, and he could only imagine how the dog's disappearance weighed on her. As he rounded the corner and spotted the entrance to the bar, something unexpected happened. A cold, wet touch brushed against his hand. Ethan froze, his heart racing. He looked down, and there he was, Cooper. The dog was panting, his fur tangled and muddy, but his eyes still shone with that same loyal, familiar gleam. "Cooper!" Ethan whispered in disbelief, quickly crouching down. He wrapped his arms tightly around the dog, emotion rising in his throat. "Buddy, where have you been? We've been looking for you everywhere." Cooper wagged his tail furiously, licking Ethan's face as if to say, "I'm here now." Ethan felt an overwhelming mix of relief and gratitude. He had found Cooper just in time. Cooper licked Ethan's face in response, but quickly stepped back and began tugging on his pant leg insistently. Ethan frowned. "What is it, champ? What are you trying to tell me?" The dog didn't give up, pulling harder and looking at Ethan with pleading eyes. A sense of urgency began to rise in Ethan's chest. He stood up quickly. "All right, I'm coming. Show me what happened." Cooper led him down a side street and then through a dark, narrow alley. As they turned the corner, Ethan saw something that made his blood run cold. A child lay motionless on the ground. Without hesitation, Ethan sprinted toward the boy, kneeling beside him to check for vital signs. "Hey, kid, can you hear me?" he asked, but there was no response. The boy's breathing was labored, his chest rising and falling in irregular spasms. Ethan quickly assessed the situation. "An asthma attack," he murmured, recognizing the symptoms. "We need help now." Grabbing his phone, he called emergency services. "This is Dr. Ethan Parker. I have a child in the middle of an asthma attack in an alley off 10th Avenue, near St. Luke's Hospital. We need an ambulance with oxygen immediately." While waiting for help to arrive, Ethan gently elevated the boy's head and whispered calming words to him. Cooper remained close, never leaving his side. When the ambulance finally pulled up, the paramedics quickly and carefully transferred the boy onto a stretcher. "I'm coming with you," Ethan informed them, stepping into the ambulance. Cooper hesitated for a moment but climbed inside after a firm nod from Ethan. The paramedics exchanged curious glances, and Ethan smiled reassuringly. "He's the hero here. Don't worry about him." At the hospital, the emergency team moved swiftly under Ethan's guidance. Oxygen was administered, and the necessary medications were given. After several tense minutes, the boy's breathing finally stabilized. His chest rose and fell steadily, and his eyes fluttered open. "You're all right now, kid. You're safe," Ethan said with a comforting smile. A short while later, the boy's mother was located, and to everyone's surprise, she was a nurse at the hospital. When she entered the room and saw her son awake and out of danger, she froze, her hands trembling with relief. "Oh my God, he's okay. My boy's okay." She rushed to the bedside, wrapping her arms tightly around her son. Tears streamed freely down her face as she thanked Ethan over and over again. "I thought I had lost him. Oh, thank you so much." "Thank you." Ethan stood quietly for a moment, watching the emotional reunion. The sight reminded him of the weight of his profession, the sacrifices and moments of impact that came with saving lives. Cooper sat beside him, wagging his tail softly as if he, too, understood the importance of the moment. She turned to Ethan and, without thinking, threw her arms around him, crying with emotion. "Doctor, you saved his life. I don't even know how to thank you." Ethan, a bit taken aback by the sudden embrace, smiled gently. "You don't need to thank me. I wasn't the only one. Actually, it was this guy right here." He gestured toward Cooper, who lay calmly in the corner of the room, watching everything attentively. The woman's eyes widened in surprise. "Really?" "Yes. He found me on the street and led me straight to your son. He's a real hero." She slowly approached Cooper and knelt down to pet him. The dog perked up his ears and wagged his tail, enjoying the affectionate touch. "I can't believe it. Did he really do that?" Ethan nodded. "He did. He's special. Always has been." The woman looked back at Ethan, trying to piece things together. "You know him?" "I do," Ethan replied with a soft smile. "He belongs to my ex-fiancé. His name is Cooper." "Cooper," she repeated, glancing again at the dog. "So he was lost? We found him about 3 days ago. My son saw him wandering the street alone and got attached to him. We tried to find out who his owner was. We asked around the neighborhood, but no one knew anything. We didn't see any posters either. Since he seemed well cared for, we decided to take him in until someone showed up." She paused thoughtfully. "In fact, we were planning to put up posters this weekend to try to find his owner." Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "No need to worry. I know exactly who his owner is. Tomorrow is a big day for her, and I can take him back." The woman smiled in relief. "I'm glad you found him. It seems he was meant to help my son before going home. It's almost like an angel appeared at the right moment." "Maybe he did," Ethan said, glancing at Cooper with admiration. "He's always had a protective instinct for the people he loves." And now he has another great story to tell. But let's head to my office. We need to talk about your son. Ethan's office was warm and inviting, with shelves full of medical books and framed diplomas adorning the walls. He motioned for the boy's mother to sit in a leather armchair near his desk. Cooper lay at Ethan's feet, alert, as if he understood that the conversation still revolved around him. So, tell me, Ethan began in a gentle tone, why was your son alone on the street? He's much too young to be in that kind of situation without supervision. The woman took a deep breath, brushing her hair back as if summoning the strength to speak was an ongoing challenge. You know, Doctor, life's been complicated lately. She paused, trying to steady her voice. My husband left us when Liam was still little. My parents helped me a lot with raising him. They were always my support system. She hesitated, her eyes becoming glassy with tears. But I lost my father 2 years ago, and last month I lost my mother. Since then, I've been trying to juggle everything: work, taking care of my son, managing the house. But it's not easy. Ethan listened in silence, his expression full of empathy. She exhaled deeply before continuing. Liam has piano lessons every Friday at a music school 3 blocks from here. I was on shift today, and he insisted on coming to meet me at the hospital after his lesson. I asked him to bring his asthma inhaler, but I think he either lost it or forgot it along the way. She shook her head, frustration evident on her face. He also asked if he could bring the dog along since the two of them got along so well. I thought it would be safe, but I didn't expect something like this to happen. She paused, then looked over at Cooper, who remained lying down, his head resting on his paws. I don't even know how to thank you, or this incredible dog who showed up in our lives. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. Her words struck him deeply. He leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle and reassuring. You don't need to apologize or blame yourself. You did the best you could under the circumstances. She smiled shyly, wiping her eyes. Thank you, Doctor. Now let me be direct, Ethan said, his tone kind but firm. You need some rest. Take the next 3 days off to focus on your son. His health and yours should be your top priority. The woman's eyes widened in surprise. But I can't just take off like that. The hospital is always short-staffed, and I don't want to be a burden to the team. Ethan smiled and shook his head. Trust me, the team can handle it. You're going to take care of your son, and that's an order. She chuckled softly, finally relaxing for the first time that night. All right, Doctor. Thank you so much for this. Really, Ethan stood, signaling that their conversation was coming to a close. I'll take Cooper now for a bath. She said her goodbyes and left the room, casting one last affectionate glance at Cooper. As the door closed, Ethan looked at the dog and smiled. You really are something special, you know that? You saved a life today, buddy. Cooper wagged his tail, as if acknowledging the praise, while Ethan stood for a moment, reflecting on the unexpected twists of the night. Cooper, as if he understood, perked up his ears and wagged his tail. Ethan sighed, slipping his hands into his pockets. All right, buddy, let's get you ready for tomorrow. We've got a lot to do. With Cooper at his side, Ethan Parker walked through the dark streets, searching desperately for a pet shop still open. The night was advancing quickly, and every shop he passed had already closed for the day. He sighed, weary, as the dog trotted faithfully beside him. No luck, champ, Ethan murmured, stopping in front of yet another closed store. We'll handle this first thing in the morning. You need to be spotless for the big day. Cooper wagged his tail in quiet understanding, and the two headed back to Ethan's apartment. Ethan quickly organized what he could, set out a bowl of water for the dog, and went to bed, setting his alarm for the early morning hours. At dawn, Ethan left the apartment with Cooper, determined to complete their mission. Not long after, he found a pet shop called Paws and Claws Grooming, which was already welcoming its first clients. The staff agreed to take Cooper right away, and Ethan gave them detailed instructions, ensuring that the dog would receive the best care possible. The grooming session took a few hours, but the results were flawless. Cooper emerged with his golden fur shining, freshly bathed and fragrant, his collar perfectly adjusted. Ethan smiled in satisfaction. "Now you're ready," he said, giving the dog a gentle pat on the neck. "Let's head home. I still need to get myself ready." Back at the apartment, Ethan prepared quickly but paid attention to every detail. He put on an elegant dark suit, adjusted his tie with precision, and ran a hand through his hair, ensuring a polished appearance. In the mirror, he saw the reflection of a successful man, yet his eyes betrayed a shadow of restrained emotion. Once he was ready, he grabbed Cooper and headed for the car. However, as soon as they hit the streets of Chicago, he ran into an unexpected problem. The traffic was chaotic. A series of construction projects and events had blocked the main roads, and time began to slip away. Ethan glanced nervously at the clock, tension tightening in his chest. "Oh no, I can't be late," he muttered, drumming his fingers anxiously on the steering wheel. He tried switching routes multiple times, but the gridlock seemed endless. Finally, when he realized he couldn't get any closer by car, he made a snap decision. "No choice, Cooper. We're going on foot." He pulled into a side street, parked the car, and jumped out, grabbing Cooper's leash. The two took off running through the crowded streets. Ethan weaved through pedestrians, Cooper keeping pace effortlessly by his side. Despite the odds, they pushed forward, determined to make it. And in the end, everything worked out. The mission was completed successfully. At that moment, as Ethan drove his car, he realized he was nearing the hospital. His thoughts, however, were still tangled in reflections about what his life had become. For the first time in ages, a sense of clarity settled in his mind. He whispered softly to himself, "I was born for this, to save lives. But I need to start thinking about myself too. I can't keep living like this, alone. I need balance." As he walked into the hospital, his team greeted him with good news. "Dr. Parker, we've stabilized the patient. She's conscious and in good condition. Just a leg fracture. The tests didn't show any serious internal injuries." Ethan nodded in appreciation and took the patient's chart to review the details. His eyes landed on the name, Olivia Reed. He froze for a moment, the name echoing in his mind. "Olivia Reed, why does that sound so familiar?" he murmured, furrowing his brow as he tried to recall memories from the past. "I'll go to her room. Maybe seeing her will jog my memory," he said, leaving the nurse's station. When he opened the door to the patient's room, he was greeted by a smile that made him stop in his tracks. It was her, Olivia Reed, his old friend from college. She looked even more beautiful than he remembered, her features now shaped by maturity, yet her eyes still sparkled with that same warmth. Ethan took a step forward, astonished. "I can't believe it. It's you," he exclaimed in disbelief. "After all these years, how are you? And what on earth did you do to get yourself hurt like this?" Olivia laughed softly, tucking some disheveled hair behind her ear. "Oh, I knew this reunion would be like this. I'm doing well, or at least I will be. I wasn't up to anything crazy, just trying to organize my move. It's all thanks to a stubborn box of books. I lost my balance, and here I am." Ethan was still processing the coincidence. "You disappeared after our second year of college. You transferred schools, and we never spoke again. What happened?" She sighed and adjusted herself on the bed. "I had to move out of state because of my family. I finished my degree at another school, but I always kept track of your achievements from afar. I knew you'd become the brilliant doctor everyone talks about." Ethan shook his head with a smile. "I had no idea you were back. What brings you to Chicago?" With a playful wink, Olivia said, "I had a feeling you might need some help, so I came to offer my services. I thought, would Dr. Parker consider hiring me for his exclusive team of professionals?" Ethan burst out laughing. Olivia, you've always had a great sense of humor. If that offer is serious, we'll sign your contract today. She laughed along with him but quickly corrected him. You silly man, I already work for you. I started here last week. But you've been so busy you didn't even notice. I applied for a position and was hired by your team. I was organizing my move today when the accident happened. Ethan raised his eyebrows in surprise. I really had no idea. Well, in that case, welcome officially, Dr. Reed. But no more accidental falls, all right? Olivia laughed again. Don't worry, I'll take care of myself. But thankfully, my guardian angels are pretty good. They always protect me. Ethan crossed his arms, gazing at her with an affectionate smile. At least you're okay and didn't suffer any serious injuries. That's a relief. They continued talking for hours, reminiscing about their college days, sharing stories of their medical careers, and catching up on life since they had lost touch. The connection between them, dormant for years, seemed to reignite effortlessly. In that moment, Ethan didn't feel the weight of his responsibilities or the loneliness that had haunted him. Perhaps, at last, his life was about to take a new direction. Over the next few months, Ethan Parker and Olivia Reed grew closer. The fast-paced life at the hospital left little room for downtime, but whenever they had a chance, they found time to have lunch together in the hospital cafeteria or enjoy dinners at small nearby restaurants. During those moments, work took a back seat. They laughed, swapped stories from the past, and shared the ups and downs of their journeys. Ethan felt revitalized by her presence. Their friendship was unlike any he'd had in recent years. Olivia had a gift for lightening the burden of his responsibilities, bringing a sense of ease and warmth to his day. Gradually, and almost imperceptibly, their feelings for each other began to deepen. On a cold Friday evening, as they said goodbye in the hospital parking lot, Ethan hesitated for a moment before speaking. Something inside urged him to take the next step. Olivia, he began, meeting her gaze. How about dinner tonight? Something more special. Away from the hospital, she raised her eyebrows in mock surprise, though the playful smile on her lips disarmed him. I thought you'd never ask. Ethan chuckled, feeling more at ease. Well, I figured it was time before you started accusing me of being completely clueless. She shook her head in amusement. Of course, I'll go. Give me an hour to get ready, and we'll meet at the restaurant. Deal, Ethan agreed with a grin. I'll see you there. All right, I'll come pick you up. An hour later, they arrived at an elegant restaurant in downtown Chicago, softly lit with a panoramic view of the city skyline. The atmosphere was serene, filled with the gentle hum of instrumental music. The evening began lightheartedly, with jokes and funny stories from their college days. Ethan, who rarely allowed himself to relax, was more at ease than he had been in a long time. I still can't believe you were the student who always seemed to have all the answers in class, Ethan teased as they clinked their wine glasses. Oh, please, Olivia laughed. You were the professor's favorite. I was just trying to keep up with you. The conversation flowed naturally. They talked about their travels, professional challenges, and even the dreams they had put on hold over the years. Dinner stretched on, filled with subtle moments of intimacy, lingering glances, smiles that carried unspoken meaning. When dessert arrived, Ethan found himself watching her in silence for a few seconds. Olivia noticed and tilted her head, curiosity sparking in her eyes. What is it? Why are you looking at me like that? I don't know, he replied, leaning back in his chair thoughtfully. I think I'm just realizing how lucky I feel that we found each other again. Olivia looked away for a moment, perhaps to hide the flush of warmth spreading across her cheeks. I feel the same way, Ethan. Some things really do happen at the right time. Later that night, Ethan drove her back to the building where she had recently moved. When they arrived, Olivia turned to him with a playful smile, though her gaze now held a deeper warmth. How about a drink to end the night? She asked, already expecting his answer. Ethan smiled softly, Sure, why not? They entered the building together, both fully aware that the night was far from over. The elevator ascended slowly, but the silence between them was charged with electric tension. They exchanged glances that spoke louder than words, their unspoken feelings finally bubbling to the surface. Ethan stepped closer to her, his gaze deep and intense, locked on hers. Olivia's heartbeat quickened as if anticipating something inevitable and magical. Ethan gently wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her softly toward him. She didn't resist, on the contrary. She leaned in closer, as if the very act of being apart was unbearable. Their eyes communicated everything words could not express, the distance between them vanishing in a moment of perfect understanding. Ethan hesitated for only a second, but when he saw the trust and surrender in her eyes, he found the courage. He kissed her with passion, an intense kiss filled not only with desire but also with something deeper, connection and emotion. The next few moments melted into a blur of warmth and sensation. His hands held her waist firmly, while her arms wrapped around his neck. The world around them seemed to fade away, as if they were the only two people in existence at that moment. When the elevator finally stopped and the doors opened, they slowly pulled apart, just enough to catch their breath. Ethan smiled, a genuine smile filled with awe and a hint of disbelief. "Wow, that was incredible." Olivia chuckled softly, her cheeks still flushed. "It really was." They stepped out of the elevator, holding hands, and entered her apartment. Olivia led him to the balcony, which offered a breathtaking view of the city. Chicago's lights sparkled like earthly stars, mirroring the sky above. "I'll fix us a drink. Make yourself comfortable," she said, disappearing briefly into the kitchen. Ethan leaned against the balcony railing, gazing out at the glittering skyline. His thoughts wandered to how different he felt in her presence. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, he had found a moment to truly breathe, a fragment of peace amidst the constant chaos of his life. Soon, Olivia returned with 2 glasses in hand. "Here you go. I hope you like it." "Thank you," he said, taking one of the glasses. They toasted silently and sat in comfortable chairs, letting the cool night breeze brush their faces. They talked for a while, sharing thoughts and reflections, but there were also stretches of peaceful silence, filled only by the distant hum of the city below. Olivia gazed up at the stars and sighed softly. "I love this view. It reminds me that, despite all the chaos, life still offers these moments of calm. If you know where to look." Ethan watched her for a moment, admiring the way she saw life. "Maybe I'm finally learning that. Thanks to you." She turned to him with a gentle smile. "Then I guess we're on the right path." They stayed there for hours, sharing stories and dreams under the starlight. In that moment, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Over time, Ethan found the balance that once seemed impossible. He finally understood that he didn't have to choose between saving lives and living his own. He learned to delegate responsibilities at the hospital, trusting his team, and began cherishing moments outside the clinical walls, creating new memories with Olivia. Endless night shifts gave way to planned weekends, short trips, and special dinners where they disconnected from the world around them. Olivia, in turn, brought a fresh energy to the hospital. As a respected and dedicated physician, she became an indispensable figure in the medical staff. Together, they formed an unbeatable duo, not just at work, but in life. They supported each other through challenges and celebrated every victory, both personal and professional. The proposal came on a quiet night, on the same balcony where everything had begun. Ethan, kneeling with a ring in hand, smiled sincerely. "I found balance, but only because you're here with me. Marry me, Olivia." She didn't hesitate. "Of course I will. I don't want to be anywhere but by your side." The wedding was an intimate but deeply meaningful event. Close friends and family gathered to witness the moment. Just as in the past with Rachel, Cooper played a special role. He entered the ceremony with the rings tied to a small collar, walking with the grace of a true star. The gesture brought tears of emotion to the guests and warm smiles to the couple. "Ethan," Olivia whispered, watching Cooper approach, "I think he's always been a symbol of love and hope. It's as if he's reminding us that the past and present can coexist in harmony." Ethan gently squeezed her hand. "And now he's part of our new story. We're exactly where we're meant to be." The following years were filled with dreams fulfilled. Ethan and Olivia traveled whenever they could, visiting places they had always wanted to see. At the hospital, they became a widely admired team, known for their work ethic and compassion for their patients. But what they valued most were the simple moments. Quiet walks in the park, cozy nights at home watching movies, or deep conversations under the stars. Over time, they built a life full of love, growth, and partnership. The silent promise to care for each other was honored in every small act of their daily lives. And so, they lived happily, not because everything was perfect, but because they had learned together to find happiness in the little details of the journey. If you enjoyed this video, let us know in the comments. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to subscribe. A big hug, and see you in the next video.